The sun was sinking behind the red cliffs when the river began to swell. Clouds rolled low, and thunder echoed across the canyon like the growl of some ancient spirit. Along the muddy banks, a horse broke free, reins snapping as a terrified woman clung to a branch jutting from the current. Her fine dress, soaked and torn, clung to her like desperation itself. Her name was Evelyn Hartwell, 30 years of age, once known in the nearby town of Coyote Bend as the widow of a wealthy rancher. But now, as the current pulled her deeper, wealth meant nothing. Panic filled her throat as she tried to scream, but the water choked her voice. Through the roar of the storm, a figure appeared on the ridge, a lone Apache warrior on horseback. His name was Tatsi, known among his people as the Silent Hawk, a man who spoke little and wandered alone since his village had been burned by soldiers 2 winters ago. He had come to the river for water and solitude, not to save anyone. Yet the sight of a drowning woman stirred something deep inside him that refused to stay still. He leaped from his horse and dove into the rushing river without hesitation. The cold struck him like a knife, but he cut through the water with steady arms, fighting the current that twisted around him like serpents. Evelyn saw him through half-closed eyes, thinking for a brief moment she was seeing a spirit. Then his hands gripped her waist, pulling her toward the shallows with fierce strength. When they reached the bank, Evelyn collapsed, coughing river water and gasping for breath. Tatsi knelt beside her, his dark hair plastered to his shoulders, his eyes sharp yet calm. The rain streaked down his face, and his chest rose with the rhythm of controlled exhaustion. "You breathe," he said in a deep, accented voice. "Good." Evelyn looked up at him through trembling lashes. Who are you?" He did not answer immediately. He only looked at the sky as if searching for a sign. "Tatsi," he finally said, "you fell into the river." Her lips trembled into a faint, ironic smile. "I suppose that part one remember." She tried to sit up but gasped as pain shot through her leg. Tatsi moved quickly, tearing a strip of cloth from his own tunic to bind her ankle. His movements were quiet, precise, as if he'd done this countless times before. When she tried to thank him, he simply shook his head. "River takes many," he said softly. "You were lucky." The rain eased into a drizzle, and the air filled with the scent of wet earth and sagebrush. Evelyn looked at him closely now, the lines of his face carved by both sun and sorrow, his body strong, lean, and scarred. There was something both dangerous and safe about him, the kind of man who seemed untamed by the laws of towns or men. "My carriage overturned near the crossing," she said quietly. "The driver? I don't know where he went." Tatsi's eyes flicked to the distance. "I saw no one. We look in the morning." Night comes fast. He led her to a shallow cave near the riverbank where a small fire already smoldered from his earlier camp. As she sat beside it, the heat from the flames drew steam from her soaked dress. She shivered uncontrollably. "You need warmth," he said. Dachi hesitated, her cheeks coloring. I can't sit here like this." He turned away, giving her his blanket without a word. She wrapped it around herself and stared into the fire, the shadows dancing across the stone walls. Silence filled the air, thick, uneasy, and strangely intimate. After a long pause, she whispered, "You saved my life." Tatsi looked at her, his eyes reflecting the firelight like amber glass. "River chose not to take you," he said. "I only pulled you out." Her lips curved faintly, but her eyes stayed serious. "Still, thank you." He said nothing more. Outside, thunder rolled once again, and the river's voice grew distant beneath the night. Evelyn watched him as he sat by the entrance, guarding her like a sentinel against unseen ghosts. She didn't know why, but the way he stared into the storm made her feel something strange, not fear, not gratitude, but an ache she couldn't name. When he finally turned to her, His gaze met hers with quiet intensity. "This place is not safe," he murmured. "At dawn, I will take you to the town." She nodded, pulling the blanket closer. But in her heart, she already knew the night would change everything. The rain whispered against the rocks outside the cave as darkness swallowed the canyon. The fire crackled softly, casting orange light on the damp stone walls. Evelyn Hartwell sat close to the flames, wrapped in Totsy's wool blanket. Her dress clung to her skin, heavy and cold despite the warmth. She could feel her heartbeat echoing in her throat, half from fear, half from something else she didn't yet understand. Totsy sat near the cave's mouth, cross-legged and silent, staring into the night as though the storm itself spoke a language only he could hear. His long black hair glistened with rain, and his bare shoulders shimmered in the flicker of the fire. There was no arrogance in his posture, only calm awareness, as if his soul had been carved from the stone around them. Evelyn cleared her throat softly. "Do you always wander alone?" she asked, her voice trembling more from nerves than cold. Totsy didn't look at her immediately. "I go where spirits do not follow." She frowned slightly. "That sounds lonely." "Better to walk alone," he said, "than to walk with ghosts." The words sank into her like a stone falling through deep water. She wondered what kind of ghosts haunted him: loss, betrayal, war? There was pain in his voice, though it was hidden behind strength. "You speak like a preacher," she said, trying to bring a touch of lightness. "But you don't seem the church-going kind." That earned a faint smile from him, a small, fleeting crack in his stoic face. "My church is the land," he said. "The river, the wind, the fire. They talk. I listen." Evelyn leaned forward slightly, the firelight painting her face in shades of gold. "And what does the fire say now?" He met her eyes, then dark, deep, unreadable. "It says you are afraid." She swallowed. "Should I be?" Totsy turned back toward the night. "Only if you trust the wrong people." The cave fell quiet again. Outside, the rain softened into mist. Evelyn shifted slightly, wincing at the ache in her ankle. He noticed at once and moved toward her with a quiet grace that made her heart skip. He knelt beside her, checking the bandage he'd tied earlier. His hands were strong but gentle, his touch steady. "You will walk soon," he murmured. "River did not break you." "Not yet," she said with a shaky laugh. "Though it tried." His lips curved faintly again. "You fought." "That is good." For a moment, their eyes met in the dim light and time seemed to still. She caught the faint scent of smoke and earth on him, the wildness of rain-soaked skin and pine. He looked away first, standing and feeding the fire another branch. "Your people," she asked softly, "where are they now?" He paused. The question hung in the air like smoke. "Gone," he said finally. "Taken or burned. I am what is left." Evelyn's throat tightened. She wanted to say something, anything, to bridge the sorrow that flickered in his eyes, but no words felt right. She only whispered, "I'm sorry." He gave a slow nod. "Do not be. Life changes. We change with it." The fire popped, throwing sparks into the dark. Evelyn watched him quietly, wondering how a man so broken could still look so strong. And yet, in his presence, she felt strangely safe. Safer than she had felt in years. When a cold wind blew into the cave, she shivered and drew the blanket tighter. Her soaked dress clung to her legs, heavy and chilled. Totsy noticed. Without a word, he turned his back to her and added wood to the flames, making them rise higher. She hesitated before speaking again. "Totsy." He glanced over his shoulder. "If you turn around," she said softly, her voice trembling between boldness and gratitude, "will you stay if I undress?" The words surprised even her. They came not from flirtation but from exhaustion and vulnerability the desperate honesty of a woman stripped of pride and pretense. Tatsi didn't answer right away. His shoulders stiffened slightly, but he kept his back turned, eyes on the flames. The silence between them was alive, almost sacred. Finally, he said in a low, firm tone, "You do what you must to live. I will not look." Her breath trembled in her chest. Slowly, she loosened the wet fabric, the blanket shielding her from his gaze. The sound of dripping water from her dress echoed in the still cave. Tatsi stared at the fire, but his mind betrayed him. He could feel the heat behind him shift, the rhythm of her breath, the fragile sound of cloth falling to the ground. His jaw tightened, his hands curling into fists on his knees. Evelyn slipped beneath the blanket, now dry and warm against her bare skin. "You can turn around now," she whispered, voice fragile yet filled with trust. He turned his head slightly, eyes catching the flicker of the flames reflected in hers. She looked peaceful, wrapped in his blanket, her hair glowing like gold in the firelight. Tatsi nodded once. "Sleep," he said quietly. "The storm is ending." And as she drifted into sleep, he sat awake by the cave mouth, guarding her from the night, unaware that this single act of mercy would change both their fates forever. When dawn broke over the canyon, the storm had passed. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of wet earth and sage. Sunlight filtered through the cave's mouth, turning the rising mist into threads of gold. Evelyn Hartwell stirred beneath Tatsi's blanket, her lashes fluttering as the light touched her face. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. Then the events of the night came rushing back: the river, the rescue, the fire, and the quiet man who now sat outside, sharpening a knife on a flat stone. Tatsi's back was to her, the morning light tracing the curve of his shoulders and the line of a scar across his spine. He moved with steady rhythm, calm and precise. His horse grazed near the river, its dark mane glistening with dew. Evelyn sat up slowly, clutching the blanket around her. Her ankle throbbed, but it was better. She watched him in silence for a moment before whispering, "You don't sleep much, do you?" He didn't turn. "Sleep is for men who have homes." Something in his tone made her chest tighten. "And you don't?" "I had one," he said quietly, setting the knife down. "Soldiers took it. Fire finished the rest." Evelyn looked down, her throat dry. She wanted to say she was sorry again, but the words felt small. Instead, she said, "Then maybe you should build a new one." Tatsi rose and faced her. The sunlight caught the turquoise beads hanging from his necklace. His dark eyes met hers, steady and unreadable. "Home is not wood or stone," he said. "It is people. When they are gone, the land is all that listens." His words lingered in the morning air like smoke. Evelyn found herself holding his gaze longer than she meant to. There was pain in his eyes, but also strength, the kind that refused to bend even when everything else had been taken. He handed her a piece of dried meat and a small skin of water. "Eat," he said simply. "Then we ride." As she ate, she studied him quietly. "Tatsi, what will you do after you take me back to town?" He shrugged, slipping a knife into its sheath. "Go where I am not wanted." "That is most places." Evelyn frowned. "You saved my life. That should count for something." His lips curved faintly, though it wasn't quite a smile. "To some, yes. To others, it makes me a threat. An Apache near Coyote Bend? They will not thank me for helping you." She looked down, guilt washing through her. He was right. The people of her town, her late husband's town, would never look at him with gratitude. They would see only what they wanted to see, a savage in their land. "Still," she said softly, "if they speak against you, I'll defend you." Tatsi's eyes flicked to her, sharp and searching. "Words are stones," he said. "They fall easy, but few are brave enough to stand under them." Evelyn wanted to answer, but the sound of distant hoofbeats silenced her. Tatsi stiffened instantly, his hand going to the bow strapped to his horse. "Stay here," he ordered. He moved up the ridge, crouched low. Evelyn's heart pounded as she watched him vanish into the brush. The hoofbeats grew louder, several riders approaching fast. Moments later, Tatsi returned, his expression grim. "3 men," he said. "They ride hard. One wears a black hat." Evelyn's face went pale. "Black hat? That's Jed Coulter, my husband's foreman. He's dangerous." Tatsi's jaw tightened. "They follow your tracks." She clutched the blanket tighter. "Why would they be after me?" He didn't answer, but the look in his eyes told her he already suspected. He moved quickly, tossing a saddle onto his horse. "We go. Now." Evelyn limped forward. "I can't ride far, my ankle." "You will," he said firmly. "Or they will find us." He lifted her onto the horse as if she weighed nothing, then swung up behind her. His chest pressed against her back, warm and solid. The horse surged forward, hooves pounding through the wet earth. Behind them, voices echoed faintly through the canyon, harsh, angry, close. As they rode through the rising sun, Evelyn looked back once, seeing 3 dark figures on the ridge. She turned to Tatsi. "They think I drowned. Why would they chase me?" "Because," he said, eyes fixed ahead, "someone does not want you to speak." Her heart skipped. "About what?" Tatsi didn't answer, but the way his jaw set, the way his grip tightened on the reins, told her this was no simple rescue anymore. Whatever waited in Coyote Bend wasn't just her home. It was a secret someone wanted buried with her. And as the canyon opened into the wide plains, Evelyn realized with chilling certainty that her life had been saved only to uncover something far darker. The sun had climbed high by the time Tatsi slowed the horse. They had ridden hard across the desert plain, leaving the river and the men behind. The horse snorted, sides lathered with sweat, as Tatsi guided it toward a rocky ravine hidden by tall sagebrush. "Here," he said quietly, dismounting first. He helped Evelyn down gently, steadying her by the waist. She winced as her ankle touched the ground, but she said nothing. The warmth of his hands lingered longer than it should have. The ravine opened into a narrow canyon, dry, secret, and safe. There was a small stream running through it, glimmering in the sunlight. Birds called from above, their voices soft against the emptiness. Evelyn sank onto a flat rock, clutching the blanket still wrapped around her shoulders. Her fine features, once refined and polished by wealth, now looked raw and human. Tatsi's eyes swept the horizon before he crouched to inspect the horse's tracks. "They follow," he murmured. Her heart quickened. "Can they find us?" "Not here," he said. "But we cannot stay long." He filled her canteen and handed it to her. She drank greedily, wiping her mouth. Her voice trembled as she said, "Tatsi, I think I know why they're after me." He looked up sharply. "Then speak." She hesitated, her fingers twisting the edge of the blanket. "My husband, Samuel Hartwell, was killed 2 months ago. They said it was a robbery, but it wasn't. He found something. Something men like Jed Coulter would kill to keep quiet." Tatsi's gaze hardened. "What did he find?" "A map," she whispered, "hidden in the floorboards of our barn. It showed old Apache trails and markings near Silver Butte. He believed it led to something valuable, maybe gold. He meant to return it to your people." The silence that followed was heavy. Tatsi's jaw tightened and his voice dropped low. "Gold is not ours. The white men took it, brought death with it. If your husband meant to return it, he was different." Evelyn nodded slowly. "He was kind, fair. That's why they killed him. And now they think I have the map." Tatsi's eyes flicked toward the horizon. "Do you?" She hesitated. then reached beneath the blanket, pulling a small leather pouch from inside her dress. "I don't even know if it's real," she said, "but I couldn't leave it behind." He took the pouch, opened it, and studied the folded paper inside. The drawings were crude but clear, the symbol of the rising sun, a serpent winding through canyons, and an X near a cluster of rocks that matched this very region. He looked at her, his eyes unreadable. "You carry fire in your hands," he said quietly. "This map could start a war." Evelyn's breath caught. "Then help me destroy it." He didn't answer. Instead, he folded the map carefully and returned it to her. "Not yet," he said. "If men chase you for this, we must know why." The truth burns cleaner than lies. As the afternoon wore on, they hid beneath the canyon's shadow. Tatsi gathered wood, his movements silent and efficient. Evelyn watched him, his muscles moving beneath bronze skin, the tribal jewelry at his chest catching the light. He was unlike any man she had known, unbending, solitary, yet alive in a way others weren't. When he returned to her, he said, "You should rest." "I will watch." She looked at him, her eyes tired but curious. "You've spent your life running from men like Coulter, haven't you?" "I do not run," Tatsi said simply. "I move with the wind." They chase the storm. I become it. Evelyn smiled faintly, shaking her head. "You speak in riddles." He sat beside her then, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. His eyes softened. "You speak with fear," he said. "But fear means you still want to live." She met his gaze, her breath shallow. "And what about you? Do you still want to live, Tatsi?" He turned toward the canyon, the wind lifting his hair. "I live so my people are not forgotten." The sound of those words struck something deep in her, something she hadn't felt since before her husband's death. It wasn't love yet, but the beginning of understanding. As the sky began to darken, Tatsi rose suddenly, hand going to his knife. From far off an echo bounced through the canyon. A gunshot, faint but real. Evelyn's blood ran cold. "They found us." Tatsi's expression hardened, eyes narrowing like a hawk's. "No," he said. "Not yet. But they are close." He grabbed the reins of his horse and reached for her hand. "We move when the sun sets. You must trust me." She looked up at him, this warrior who had saved her, shielded her, and now fought for her without asking anything in return, and whispered, "I already do." The canyon fell silent again, but the storm of men and greed was coming. And Evelyn Hartwell knew that before this was over, both her fate and Tatsi's would be written in blood and fire. The sun had already sunk behind the ridges, leaving streaks of blood-red light over the desert when Kaya and Tahoma reached the narrow mountain trail. The horses breathed heavily, their sides slick with sweat. Kaya's once pristine dress was torn at the hem, dust clinging to the lace. She had never imagined herself riding this far from town, let alone beside an Apache warrior who moved like part of the land itself. They stopped at a narrow pass where a cold wind whistled through. Tahoma dismounted silently and raised his hand, motioning for Kaya to stay quiet. He crouched low, his dark eyes scanning the rocky path ahead. The air felt thick with tension. "What is it?" Kaya whispered, clutching the saddle. "Riders," Tahoma murmured, his deep voice steady but low. "3, maybe 4. They've been following since the canyon." Kaya's heart lurched. "But why?" He looked up at her, his jaw tight. "Because you helped me. And because they think I took something from them." Kaya's mind raced. The men from town, her so-called friends, had been furious when she defended Tahoma at the saloon. They'd wanted him gone, branded him a thief, a savage. She never believed it. Now she was paying for it. "What do we do?" she asked. Tahoma glanced at her, the dying light catching the turquoise pendant around his neck. We don't run anymore." Before she could respond, he led her horse into the shadows beneath a rocky ledge. The smell of dust and sage filled the air. He drew his knife long, curved, with intricate carvings on the handle, and pressed it into her hands. "Hold this," he said softly. She looked down at the blade, shaking her head. "I can't." "You can," he interrupted gently, his voice suddenly calm, almost soothing. "You helped me when no one else would. Now I help you." The sound of hooves echoed closer. The wind carried laughter drunken, cruel. Kaya's breath caught. Then came the flicker of lanterns, swinging in the hands of 3 men riding hard through the dark. "Tahoma!" one shouted. "Come out, savage. We know you got the lady." Kaya's blood ran cold. She wanted to scream, but Tahoma's hand covered her mouth, his touch firm yet protective. His heartbeat thudded against her back as they hid behind the rocks. "They're from town," she whispered when he finally moved his hand. "They'll kill you." "Maybe," Tahoma said quietly, "but they'll not touch you." In that moment, Kaya saw something in his eyes that she hadn't before, not just strength, but sorrow. He wasn't fighting for revenge. He was fighting for dignity, for peace, for something greater than either of them. As the men drew nearer, Tahoma stepped out from the shadows. His bare chest gleamed under the moonlight, muscles tense, his long hair whipping in the wind. "Well, look who's here," the lead rider sneered, pulling his rifle from the saddle. "Thought you could hide behind a lady's skirt?" Kaya stepped forward before she could think. "Stop! He didn't hurt me. He saved me." The men laughed, circling her. "Saved you? From what? The truth?" Tahoma's gaze hardened. "You lie too much, white man. Big words from someone who ain't even supposed to be here." The rider snapped, raising his gun. Before he could fire, Tahoma moved like lightning, grabbing the rifle, twisting it, knocking the man off his horse. A struggle erupted, chaos echoing across the rocks. Kaya's heart pounded as gunfire lit the night. Sparks flashed, shouts rang out. When it was over, 2 men lay wounded, groaning on the ground. The third scrambled to his horse and fled into the darkness. Kaya stared at Tahoma, his chest heaving, his hands bloody but steady. He turned to her slowly, his expression unreadable. "You didn't have to do that," she said breathlessly. "Yes, I did," he replied simply. "Because if I didn't, you'd never see how truth survives when lies come with guns." Kaya's throat tightened. She wanted to speak, to thank him, to apologize for every cruel word she'd ever believed about his people. But all she could do was step closer, her hand trembling as she touched his arm. He looked down at her, then away toward the dark horizon. "You can go back now," he said softly. "They won't follow." "And you?" she asked. "I go where the wind takes me." As the stars blinked to life above the desert, Kaya realized she wasn't ready to say goodbye. Not yet. The man she'd thought poor and lost was far richer in honor than anyone she'd ever met. And something deep inside her told her this wasn't the end of their story, just the beginning. The fire cracked low in the canyon cave as night spread like ink across the desert sky. Lena sat near the flames, her pale dress torn and streaked with dust, the corners of her eyes glistening with fear and something she didn't quite understand. Across from her, Koa, the Apache warrior, sharpened his blade in silence, the rhythmic scrape of stone against steel echoing softly. His long black hair caught the firelight, and the turquoise beads around his neck gleamed like bits of captured sky. They had survived the ambush at dusk, barely. The cowboys had ridden off, believing them dead. But Lena knew they would return. And she also knew something had shifted inside her, between them. Koa finally looked up. "They will come again," he said in his deep, steady tone. "You must leave before the moon sets." Lena shook her head. "And go where?" "Back to town, where I'm nothing but gossip and greed." Back to the men who sold me out for gold? She looked at him, her voice trembling. You saved my life more than once, Koa. Why can't you just let me stay? Koa's jaw tightened. Because your world and mine are not the same. The fire popped and shadows danced across the cave walls. Outside, the wind howled softly through the canyons, carrying the cry of distant coyotes. Koa stood, his powerful frame illuminated by the fire. The scars along his chest told stories no words could speak. He turned toward the cave entrance, his silhouette tall and solemn against the moonlight. You think I care about the world? Lena said suddenly, standing to face him. Do you think I see you as just an Apache? You've risked everything for me, why? Koa turned slowly, his black hair falling around his shoulders. Because when I saw you in that river, he said, voice low and heavy, you did not scream like others. You fought. You wanted to live. And I? He hesitated, looking into the fire. I saw something I thought I had buried long ago. Lena stepped closer, her breath quick and shallow. Then why keep pushing me away? His dark eyes met hers. Because I am a man who brings danger to all who stand beside him. A long silence fell. The fire hissed. The cave seemed to hold its breath. Then, with trembling hands, Lena reached up and undid the clasp of her dress at her shoulder. The fabric slipped slightly, revealing the pale curve of her collarbone in the golden firelight. Her voice came out soft but firm, fragile, yet filled with something raw and brave. Will you stay, she whispered, if I undress? Koa froze. For the first time since she had met him, the calm in his eyes broke. His blade dropped quietly to the sand. Lena, he said her name like a prayer. You don't understand. I do, she interrupted gently. You saved me, Koa, not just from death, but from a life that was already killing me. I have nothing left to give, except myself. Koa stepped closer, the air between them alive with heat and hesitation. The firelight traced the hard lines of his chest, the curve of his muscles, the shimmer of his turquoise beads. He stopped an arm's length away. You are brave, he said softly, but this is not your way. You are not meant for a man who lives by the moon and sleeps with a knife at his side. And yet, Lena whispered, here I am. Koa's hands trembled at his sides. He wanted to reach for her, to stop her, to pull her close all at once. But instead, he stepped back, his voice shaking for the first time. If I stay, he said, it will not be for your body. It will be because your heart has already found mine. Lena closed her eyes, a tear slipping free. Then stay, she breathed. Stay for that. Koa stood in silence, his expression torn between duty and desire. Finally, he turned away from the entrance and sat beside her by the fire. Outside, the wind died down. The night became still. Two souls, from two worlds that were never meant to meet, now sat side by side, bound by something deeper than blood or fear. And though neither spoke another word, the flickering firelight told their story, dancing over the faces of two hearts that had finally stopped running. Morning light spilled through the cave mouth like a blessing, soft and golden. The storm had passed, and the desert outside shimmered with dew, each droplet glinting like a diamond on the red rocks. Inside, Lena stirred beside the dying fire, wrapped in Koa's blanket. Her eyes fluttered open to see him standing at the entrance, his long black hair brushing his broad shoulders as he looked toward the horizon. Koa stood bare-chested, muscles tight beneath the soft light, turquoise beads around his neck gleaming faintly. There was peace on his face, yet beneath it, a sadness that made Lena's chest ache. You're leaving, aren't you? She whispered, her voice still weak from the long night. He didn't turn at first. The men from your town will come again, he said quietly. They will not stop until they find you. If I stay, they will hunt us both. If I leave, they may spare you." Lena pushed herself up, clutching the blanket around her. "Spare me? After all this? Koa, they'd rather see me dead than see me with you." Her voice broke. "I don't care what they think. I care about you." He turned then, his dark eyes heavy with emotion. "Lena," he said her name as though it were sacred. "You don't belong to this wild land. You come from a world of lace and rules. I come from fire and silence. If you stay with me, you lose everything." Lena rose slowly, stepping toward him. Her bare feet touched the cool sand floor, and she didn't stop until she stood before him, the fire's last embers glowing behind her like a dying heart. "Then I'll lose it," she said softly, "because everything I had before, none of it ever made me feel alive." Koa reached out, his hand brushing her cheek. For a long moment, the world outside seemed to stop. The wind held its breath. Even the fire dared not crackle. "When I found you in that river," he said, his voice low, "I thought you were a sign from the spirits. A test, maybe to see if my heart could still feel." He looked down, his expression torn between love and sorrow. "Now I know you were a gift, one I am not allowed to keep." Tears welled in Lena's eyes. "Don't talk like that. We can go anywhere. Beyond the ridges, past the towns. There must be a place where we can just be." Koa smiled faintly, though it carried pain. "There is always a place, but the world never forgets what it fears." Before she could answer, a faint sound echoed from the canyon horses. Dozens of them. The metallic click of rifles carried through the still air. Koa's eyes hardened in an instant. "They've found us," he said. Lena's breath caught. "Then we run." Koa grabbed his bow and quiver, slinging them across his back. He turned to her. "No, you run." "Koa, no." He stepped closer, his forehead touching hers, his breath steady despite the danger. "You once asked if I would stay if you undressed," he murmured. "I stayed not for your body, but for your soul. And now I ask you to live for mine." Lena's tears fell freely. "I won't leave you." He smiled, tender and tragic. "Then remember me. That will be enough." Before she could argue, he turned, stepped into the light, and disappeared toward the canyon mouth. The echo of hooves grew louder. Lena stood frozen, her heart hammering. The blanket slipped from her shoulders as she ran to the entrance, just in time to see Koa on the ridge, bow drawn, standing like a shadow against the rising sun. Gunfire broke out. Horses reared. Dust exploded into the air. And then silence. When Lena reached the ridge, she fell to her knees. The battle was over. The riders were gone, scattered like ghosts. Only Koa remained kneeling, breathing shallowly, blood darkening the sand beneath him. She rushed to him, cradling his head in her lap. His eyes met hers, soft and fading. "I told you," he whispered faintly. "If I stayed, it would be for your heart." Lena sobbed, pressing her forehead to his. "Then take mine with you." His lips curved into the faintest smile before his eyes closed, his spirit drifting into the dawn. The desert was still again. Only the wind moved, whispering his name through the canyons. Lena stayed beside him until the sun rose fully, its light painting the rocks gold. Later, when travelers passed through that canyon, they spoke of a white stone carved with 2 letters K and L side by side near the riverbank. Some said the woman still visited each spring, bringing turquoise beads and wildflowers. And when the wind blew softly through the valley, it carried a voice that seemed to whisper the same question over and over. "Will you stay if I undress?" But now it sounded less like temptation and more like eternal love.